Have you ever noticed something peculiar about the world's wealthiest nations? Japan, the United States, Germany, and Russia, despite their vast differences, share one striking similarity: they all experience winter snowfall. This isn't merely a coincidence that economists brush aside. Research has demonstrated a measurable correlation between climate temperatures and national economic performance, a pattern so pronounced that neighboring Singapore implemented widespread air conditioning installation in government offices during their early independence years, believing cooler working environments would boost productivity and economic growth. Today, Singapore stands as one of Asia's most prosperous nations, so we're left with an intriguing question that has puzzled researchers for generations. Why do colder regions consistently outperform tropical zones economically? Is there something fundamentally different about these climates that shapes prosperity, or are we looking at the issue through the wrong lens entirely? Welcome to the World Documentaries, where today we'll unravel this geographical mystery that challenges everything we think we know about wealth and climate. The intelligence hypothesis, the most widespread explanation, sounds deceptively logical at first hearing. Cold climates present harsher survival challenges: freezing winters, limited growing seasons, and the constant need for shelter and warmth. According to this theory, populations in these demanding environments develop superior problem-solving abilities and work ethics out of sheer necessity. Like the old saying goes, smooth seas never made skilled sailors. Meanwhile, tropical populations allegedly enjoyed easier living conditions with year-round harvests and minimal shelter requirements, reducing the evolutionary pressure for complex thinking. When you examine global maps, this theory appears convincingly validated. Not a single equatorial nation ranks among the world's wealthiest economies. The pattern seems undeniable the further from the equator, the higher the GDP. However, before accepting this comfortable explanation, we must ask ourselves a critical question: does correlation actually prove causation here? The answer, as we'll discover, reveals uncomfortable truths about how scientific-sounding theories can mask deeply problematic assumptions about human capability and worth. Historical contradictions. History decisively contradicts the intelligence hypothesis when we examine civilization's actual trajectory. The most sophisticated ancient societies flourished in scorching climates. Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and Mesoamerica all developed in tropical or subtropical zones. The Islamic Golden Age saw unprecedented scientific advancement in the Middle East, where scholars made groundbreaking discoveries in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. European Renaissance thinkers built their knowledge directly upon translations of Arabic texts from these hot climate civilizations, essentially standing on the shoulders of scholars from regions this theory claims produce inferior minds. The origins of the cold climate intelligence theory reveal its fundamental flaws. A psychologist with documented racist beliefs originally proposed this hypothesis, and subsequent researchers have exposed how he systematically ignored contradictory evidence while cherry-picking data supporting his predetermined conclusions. Furthermore, tropical environments present their own formidable survival challenges: disease pressure, intense storms, and agricultural difficulties that demand sophisticated solutions. The assumption that warm climates allow populations to simply relax demonstrates profound ignorance about the realities of tropical life and the ingenuity required to thrive there. The geographic determinism theory, alternative explanation, shifted focus from intelligence to environmental resources and geography. Prominent scholars argued that soil fertility, mountain ranges, navigable rivers, and average temperatures directly determined a nation's resource availability and economic potential. Think of it like a strategy game where your starting position determines your advantages. Diverse natural resources create multiple pathways to prosperity. This geographic determinism theory attempted to explain why European colonizers conquered the Americas rather than the reverse. According to this framework, Europe's proximity to ancient civilizations in the Middle East and North Africa allowed technological knowledge to spread northward. Europeans inherited agricultural techniques, metallurgy, writing systems, and military innovations from these warmer regions, then developed them further. This accumulation of borrowed knowledge enabled European societies to build superior weapons, ships, and organizational systems that facilitated their global conquests. Yet even this more sophisticated theory faces substantial criticism from economists who argue it overlooks the most crucial factor determining national wealth: not what resources you have, but how you manage them. The institutional quality argument. Economic researchers propose that government effectiveness matters far more than geography or resources. A nation blessed with abundant natural wealth but cursed with corrupt, extractive institutions will remain impoverished, while resource-poor countries with transparent governance can achieve remarkable prosperity. The quality of political institutions, whether governance serves citizens or exploit them, whether rule of law exists, whether property rights are protected, these factors outweigh geographic advantages. Strong institutions encourage investment, innovation, and productive economic activity. The contrast between South Korea and North Korea provides the most compelling evidence for institutional theory. These neighboring nations share identical climates, similar culture and history, and the same geographic constraints. Yet their divergent political systems produced radically different outcomes. One became a technological and economic powerhouse, while the other struggles with poverty and isolation. However, critics argue that even this institutional explanation remains incomplete because it fails to adequately address historical injustices and their long-lasting economic consequences that continue affecting nations today. The colonial legacy problem, history and colonization represent the missing pieces that purely institutional theories overlook. Consider Haiti's devastating experience after winning independence through a successful slave revolution. France demanded enormous compensation payments for the lost property of formerly enslaved people and future profits French plantation owners would no longer receive. This independence debt, enforced by threat of military invasion, crippled Haiti's economy for generations. The country that should have been celebrating freedom instead spent the next century paying extortionate sums to its former oppressors. Similar patterns appear throughout Africa, where colonial powers deliberately extracted resources, disrupted traditional governance systems, drew arbitrary borders that ignored ethnic territories, and left behind economies structured entirely to serve European interests rather than local development. Even after independence, these structural disadvantages persist through unfair trade agreements, debt burdens, and continued foreign interference. Geographic location and current institutions cannot explain prosperity gaps without acknowledging how centuries of systematic exploitation created the unequal starting positions that nations face today in the global economy. The complexity of truth, scientific-sounding theories often carry an illusion of objectivity that masks their limitations and biases. Researchers are human beings with their own cultural assumptions, political beliefs, and unconscious prejudices that inevitably shape how they frame questions, interpret data, and draw conclusions. Even well-intentioned studies can reinforce harmful stereotypes when they fail to question their foundational assumptions or consider alternative explanations. The debate over why cold countries appear wealthier demonstrates how multiple factors, geography, institutions, historical contingencies, and colonial legacies interact in ways too complex for any single theory to fully capture. What initially seemed like a straightforward pattern requiring a simple explanation reveals itself as a tangled web of causes and effects spanning centuries. Climate may influence economic activities in certain ways, but it doesn't determine human intelligence or capability. Resources matter, but only when combined with systems that distribute benefits fairly. Good governance enables prosperity, but historical injustices create obstacles that even excellent institutions struggle to overcome. The truth resists simplification because reality itself is wonderfully, frustratingly complicated. Looking forward together, so when will countries currently classified as developing achieve prosperity comparable to wealthy nations? The honest answer acknowledges that there's no predetermined timeline. It depends on countless variables including policy choices, international cooperation, technological changes, and addressing historical inequities. What we can say with certainty is that simplistic explanations blaming climate or culture obscure the real work of building fair economic systems and confronting uncomfortable historical truths. Progress requires moving beyond comforting myths toward nuanced understanding. Thank you for joining us on the World Documentaries for this exploration of economics, geography, and history. If you found this examination thought-provoking, please subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and share it with others interested in understanding our complex world. We'd love to hear your perspective. What factors do you think most influence national prosperity? Have you witnessed how historical events continue affecting your community today? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, and join us next time as we investigate more fascinating questions about our interconnected world.